Hello, everyone. Welcome. We have lots of people joining tonight. I'm so excited. Awesome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This has been months of planning, so I'm really happy to see it finally come to action. So thank you, everyone, for joining tonight. I'm very excited. And we'll give people a few more minutes because I know that with these online things, and not everyone is the most tech savvy, so we'll just, and whatever busy schedules, so we'll wait a couple of minutes to get everyone here before we get started. So let me just say a few things here. Okay, so just a reminder to everyone that we are recording this call. The idea with doing that is we want to know for our archives, our intention is to transcribe this Q&A afterwards and potentially share it with the public afterwards, because there's some people who won't be able to attend tonight, and we want to be able to share that information that comes from this session afterwards. So that's sort of the idea. So I'm going to do a bit of housekeeping to kind of give people a sense of what to expect with tonight, and say a little bit about this project, and then we'll premiere our video, which I'm very excited to show everyone about this native garden journey that we've been on. So yeah, thank you again so much to everyone. We still have some people joining, so I want to give everyone a chance to get on the call. Oh, I'm loving this turnout. This is so great. I'm so excited. Yeah, so the outline is for tonight. So I'm going to introduce our speakers and experts, and if they want to say something about themselves, but I'll give a little intro to give you a sense of their background if you're not already familiar. I'd like to tell you a little bit about Durham Integrated Growers, if you're not familiar, and about the Nourish and Develop Foundation, again, if you're not familiar, and about this project and what we'd like to see it become, and during COVID, which is turning everything upside down, of course. And then we want to show you our video, which is the journey of us planting this native garden, which we hope might inspire others. And of course, open it up to questions and answers. So give it another minute, because there are still people joining. In the meantime, though, I'll introduce myself. My name is Zoe Levitt. I'm the Community Development Coordinator at the Nourish and Develop Foundation. So I focus on a lot of the projects that are meant to engage the community and reflect community interests. And so this is right on point. And I started back in June 1st, so I'm a relatively new face to the Nourish and Develop Foundation, but I'm really excited to be part of this organization and helping to make projects like these come to life. It's got a few more attendees here. Here we go. So let me talk a little bit about this project. So Table Talks in general is meant to be informational sessions on topics related to food security and environmental sustainability. And so in the past, they've been topics related to the environment, to food, to gardening, to sustaining a healthy community. And right now we're trying to adapt that to be done virtually through Zoom. We know with having to socially distance and all of the restrictions around COVID-19, we still want to try and promote gathering. And so this is the first virtual table talk. And so I really welcome everybody's feedback on how this virtual version was for you in terms of learning about it, signing up, how it goes tonight. Please don't hesitate to email me, because I really would love anyone's feedback to try and improve this program and make it exciting for everyone, because we really want this to be successful. And I know this virtual platform is a bit of a learning curve. So TNDF, our mission is to enhance local food security and promote self-reliance through collaborative programs and partnerships to deliver lasting solutions and lifelong learning. So that comes in a lot of different forms. It's helping to provide food to people. It's helping to do programs like this. We do women's services. We have social supports. We have our community hub. And so we have a lot of different branches to our organization, but all of it is centered around food security and lifelong learning. And we partner with Durham Integrated Growers on Table Talks. And Durham Integrated Growers, their mission is to support local community food production and food security through shared resources, mentoring, and technical and developmental assistance. And so it kind of makes for a really great partnership and allows us to promote and put together this fantastic project. So I want to say again that the intention of this project is to reflect community interest. So if you have any ideas for topics or speakers that you would like to see in this platform right now with COVID going on, please let me know. I'd love to try and help make it happen. If we can have it reflect community interest, that is going to make it all the more successful. So let me tell you about our experts. So the whole idea with this project, and I think this is a great example of how community comes together. So Richard Dickinson is one of our local experts. He is from the Wild Garden and has considerable experience in weed identification and management. And he had expressed an interest to us about wanting to plant a native garden because our office is located on the main street of Cannington. And he was telling us that, it would be great to have that public space be put to use and used as an educational resource. And then insert Courtney-Anne Kraft, who recently is a horticulturalist that recently moved here from a transplant from Toronto to Beaverton recently. And she expressed an interest in wanting to get involved in the community and use her expertise. And so we kind of put all of that together to make this project come to life. And the idea was to turn our lawn space into a native garden and record that whole process so that we could share that information with the public with the hopes to inspire others to do the same and learn about all of the benefits and wonderful things that can come from planting a native garden. And so, what other points do I want to make? We still have people joining. That's awesome. So feel free to take notes if you'd like, but I should mention that our amazing videographer and graphic and media wizard, Katerina, has graciously put together a one-page summary, which includes a lot of the info that we're going to talk about tonight. So you can look forward to that. And I'll send that out to everyone who's registered. And if you don't receive it again, please don't hesitate to contact my email address, which is all over all of the registration and website and everything. So please don't hesitate. So without further ado, what do we have? Yeah, okay, perfect. Let's get started. I would love to show you this video. I'm very proud of our videographer for putting it together, and I think it demonstrates really well what we did. And then once you guys have a chance to watch that, I'm going to share my screen with you so we can do that. And then I'm going to open it up to Courtney-Anne Kraft, and she's going to answer any questions that anyone might have about the video or about starting your own native garden. And I think the best way for us to do questions is if you want to type them in the chat box that's part of this Zoom, then I can sort of mediate and we can have Courtney-Anne answer questions as we go. So without further ado, let me share my screen and I will demonstrate this, premiere this video.
It is amazing how 2 years ago we planted butterfly weed throughout the backyard at home. And every year we've had a host of monarch caterpillars. And prior to that, Scott had said he hadn't seen any monarchs in the backyard. So if you build it, they will come. I think it could be a real showpiece for town and for the people that drive through Cannington. If you got this great prairie garden growing in a downtown, small piece of property in a really hot location, it'll prove to people that it can be done anywhere. I'm Richard Dickinson. I live here in the beautiful town of Cannington. I've spent years being a field biologist, and I've taught numerous courses on plant taxonomy and plant identification. Native plant garden is a garden that incorporates native plants into the garden itself. Some of the benefits are, from a homeowner's point of view, is they don't need water because they're acclimatized to your local area. Fertilizer, they don't require a lot of fertilizer. But the biggest benefit is attracting native birds and butterflies to your garden. Every gardener has shovels, trowels, a wheelbarrow. It's no different than a regular garden. I'd focus on getting the soil prepped. The soil is crucial to establishing a native garden. You want to get all the weeds out of there. You want to make sure that once you got your garden planted, mulching it so it retains moisture. There's a whole raft of different issues you'd have to look at. With grass, you probably could dig out the grass, shake off the soil, and just discard it. You're going to have some grass come back, but it's not going to be as much, and you can dig it out. As far as weeds, depends. Is it an annual? If it's an annual weed, then every year you have to just keep pulling the seedlings out, and that way over time you'll deplete the seed bed. For some of the heavier duty perennials with deep taproots and that, you'd have to dig it. I would try to dig at least a foot of that root out there, and hopefully over time you'll deplete that root mass. Okay, so if you're starting with a brand new garden, dig up the soil that's there, adding, if you got a heavy clay soil, you want to lighten it up, so add some sand, you're going to add some peat moss, definitely going to add manure and compost to the site as well.
My name is Courtney-Anne Craft, and I'm a horticulturist who has just recently moved from Toronto to the Durham region. So a primary philosophy of my gardening business is to plant at least 1/3 of native or pollinator-friendly plants in any garden design that I do, and if not, suggest as many native and pollinator-friendly plants as possible.
It's going to take, let's say you plant the first year, the second year, it's going to be just getting established. By the third year, it's probably going to start the beginning of its full potential. So it is not a chore, but it is a labor of love over that time period to get it established.
So when you plant a pollinator or a native plant, you're not only contributing to the beauty of your space, but you're also contributing to the food sources and habitat sources of native creatures that exist around you.
Start small, and then over time you'll probably find out some more native plants that you would really like to have in your garden, and just keep adding, and over time you'll see it evolve.
So not only is it situated in a beautiful sunny spot, it's right out front of the lovely TNDF building. On top of that, with TNDF's focus on food security, and then creating programs with intersectional perspectives from there, I think that this is a really nice way to add another layer of understanding and showcasing all of the different components of our food system. Because of course, without pollinators, we're not going to get the beautiful, healthy fruits and vegetables, or food for other creatures that also contribute to our food system.
I see Courtney-Anne giving us an applause. Awesome. Okay, great. I wish I could like get in a time machine and fast forward to like 2 or 3 years from now, because that's when it's really gonna be, amazing. But I think it's a pretty awesome transformation, and it was such a fun project to work on. So, so I'd like to open it up to anyone for questions or feedback or comments or anything like that. So there is a chat box on the side if you'd like to type in any questions, or we could do a raise hand unmuting and try and be as polite as we can. But also, Courtney-Anne, if you want to give a short introduction about yourself, we could maybe start there.
Sure, yeah. Thanks, Zoe. That video was beautiful.
Yeah.
You and Kat and the whole team.
Awesome.
Hello, everybody. My name is Courtney-Anne Kraft. Hi. As Zoe mentioned, I'm a recent resident to the Brock Township area. I just moved to Beaverton at the end of June this year from Toronto, and I'm absolutely loving it. In Toronto, I ran my own landscaping business called Garden Party, and once I moved here, I sold that business to my partner and have now started Summer-Long Gardens. As mentioned in the video, I really try to focus on native plantings, or where native might be a little bit of a fuzzy term to define. I at least focus on what I call productive plants or pollinator-friendly plants, and that includes tender perennials, woody perennials, shrubs, and small trees. So that's kind of like my purview of expertise. Although there's always more to learn, so I'm really happy to answer any of your particular questions about your gardens or about plants, or more sort of conceptual questions about why pick native plants and why that's important. Yeah, I open up the floor. Thank you for having me.
So thanks, Courtney-Anne. So Deb has a question. What are some of the plants that we planted in the garden?
Yeah, so I'm going to use, I know that Richard would probably like me to use the Latin names, but it's far more convenient for me too to just use the common names of things. Although I will say that when you are looking for plant varieties, a good knowledge of the basic Latin terms for the native plants that you seek is a good idea, because you'll find that there might be something might be called something commonly that's actually not is not of the same taxonomy from the native variety. So in that way, you kind of do just want to be a little careful to research your native Latin names. But we planted wild bergamot. We planted, which is also called Monarda, which some people do commonly know. We planted black-eyed Susans. We planted echinacea. We did a prairie coneflower which is a beautiful, tall, yellow, late flowering perennial. We did plant prairie dropseed as well as little blue stem, which are two really stunning native grasses. We also planted hoary vervain, which is not such an attractive name. I feel bad for that one, but it's also it's a verbena, which is a name that some people might recognize as well. And we did foxglove beard tongue, which is a penstemon. Again, penstemons are pretty popular as cultivars, but you want to look for the native variety Penstemon hirta. And lastly, I want to point out that we did plant butterfly weed. So that's an orange flowering Asclepsia. It's not like milkweed in that they're not necessarily related, but it's just another plant that is very attractive to the monarch butterfly specifically, which is everybody's fave.
Awesome. Thanks, Courtney-Anne. Tamara has a question. How do you find people respond to native plant suggestions for their gardens? Are they open to it, or are native plants hard to promote?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think more and more, thank goodness, people are really turning on to the idea of native varieties. And I think this is for many reasons. I think lots of folks, myself included, have come into an awareness of our own position as stewards of conservation, really, and stewards of biodiversity, even within our own backyards and front yards and potted gardens and balconies, for the very sake of the intrinsic value of diversity itself. Then you add to that the context. So I guess this is the pitch that I would give to someone is first, you are acting as a citizen conservationist when you choose these plants. Secondly, of course, you're contributing to the food system, local food system around you, which is really important for the purposes of TNDF. It's important for humans as a species. It's important to, keep our food system with a lot of variety and a lot of, nutrition density. And then thirdly, I think the biggest selling point for folks is that it's less work. So you don't have to water as often. You don't have to fertilize as often. The plants, once established, just really take care of themselves, which I think is that's the kind of like clincher. But one thing I always tell people is that it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You can incorporate any amount of native plants into the ornamental garden that you desire. And so starting with a few that are particularly attractive to you is just as important and wonderful a gesture as doing a whole, native prairie garden.
Awesome. Thanks, Kat. I want to point out that Sloan was very nice to include a resource in the chat here. Doug Ptolemy's Bringing Nature Home. They're recommending it as a fantastic resources about rebranding native plants. So to share that with everyone if you're interested in checking that out. Tamara? Sorry,
Zoe,
no, go ahead.
Doug Ptolemy is like a hero of mine. And he's the person who I saw a talk on, and it was called Gardens That Make Insects. And I'm pretty sure that you can download or find somewhere the slides for that presentation as well. And one of the quotes I think about a lot is that insects are the currency of our ecological bank account. And without those insects, essentially, all of ecology goes bankrupt. And I just think about that a lot when I'm gardening.
Awesome. Okay, Tamara has another question here. How do you find the native versions of plants like echinacea and black-eye Susans, considering there are so many cultivars?
Yeah, so that can be really tricky, and there has been some research on whether a cultivar is just as good or somewhat as good or totally not so good as compared to its sort of like mother species or the true native species. And there's been varying results on that. So until, more research maybe happens, I wouldn't put a rule to cultivars being just as good or not good at all. That being said, though, I think, again, it's important to know the Latin name of the true native species that you seek, and then ask for it in your local nurseries. There are also many native plant-specific nurseries in our area. I wrote a list, actually, which I can email to you, Zoe, if you want, and I can... and maybe we can share that with everybody.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Okay, awesome. Including the Wild Garden in Cannington, so they sell true native plants at their shop, which is great. And I think it's also important to know and remember that we have so much power as consumers. So when we are at our local nursery, asking for these varieties and asking for them to be, true native, and letting the owner or the purchaser know that that's important to you and you would buy that, is a great way to sway the tide of a product in the nursery industry.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. Lori has a question. She says, I have a shaded area I have just cleared of invasive species: buckthorn, Virginia creeper, Norway maple, and Manitoba maple with periwinkle, all on the understory.
Yeah.
Now what do I do? Now what do I put in to keep them from all coming back? Yeah,
so you've done such a good thing, Lori, and it probably wasn't easy because I have all those too. So good on you. You deserve an ice cold beer or iced tea or something. So in the meantime, are you thinking, Lori, of planting plants, or do you want to diminish those plants from coming back? And that, do you have the time and the perseverance, I guess, to maybe skip a year of planting?
I might be able to do that. I would just mulch it to death.
That's exactly it. Yeah. So what I've done in the past is used thick cardboard. You can also use black plastic, and you can lay it down for the better part of a season. And if you can stomach the look of it, put it down for an entire year. And that's a natural way to ensure that not only will they not grow, but that the roots perhaps left behind will be killed, essentially.
Okay, so once that's over, I want to replace them with, I'm thinking wild sarsaparilla, understory stuff.
I really also love, in a shady garden, I love, I wrote a list for myself so I wouldn't forget, but you can do columbines. There are also tons of native ferns, including lady fern and cinnamon fern.
Yeah.
And my personal favorite shade plant is the heartleaf wood aster.
Mm-hmm.
That one's really pretty, and it lasts really long.
It is pretty shady there. I'm worried about, as soon as I take any mulch off, that the garlic mustard is going to come in. It's just it's that type of area.
Right.
The hardly wood aster, I think, needs a bit more light. Some of those things you're saying, I could see maybe getting a whole lot of ostrich fern.
Yeah.
And
That
maybe
would
sarsaparilla, I could probably transplant. I have another property there's a lot there, but that's a great kind of shady ground cover.
Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, our native ground covers, like the wild ginger, the sarsaparilla, the bloodroot as well, and the May apple,
Uh,
those are beautiful. They are kind of slow to grow. So I think you'll be looking at some
a lot more humus that there is. That it's pretty dry once you've taken all the buckthorn out. The land is like So
Yeah.
for me, thinking that I'm going to get bloodroot growing in there, they need just the tenderest
Perfect moisture. Yeah, it's so true.
area. And I have bloodroot. I have a lot of that kind of stuff growing on the other side of the house. Just to get this thing back, because it's been decimated, right?
Yeah.
It's sucked dry by all these wheat plants and all these little stems growing up, and there's nothing. And all I'm afraid of is everything's going to come in that's the worst thing you want.
Yeah.
So, good idea to mulch it. If I can do that, I will. I'll just get cardboard from everywhere, and I'll do it for 2 years if it takes.
Yeah.
Yeah, good idea. I get.
For sure. Good luck.
And then mulch and bring in a whole bunch of compost and leaf mold. Yeah.
Like Richard said in the video, starting with the soil before you plant is the most important thing.
Yeah, because that buckthorn has killed it.
Awesome. Well, thanks for the question, Lori. That was a great question. I have another question here, wondering how to deal with root-bound plants.
Yeah, so I'm kind of a bully with the roots of my plants. If they're potted and root bound, or pot bound, growing around, I will take my secateurs and either use the blunt edge or the sharp edge, maybe depending on how mean I feel, and really just slice downwards to loosen that habit of growing around. And then I'll kind of like tickle on the inside and fluff out the roots. So this is all before the plant goes in the ground. And then you do want to dig your hole, 3 times wider is kind of the standard. Then the width of the root ball or the length of the root ball itself. Splay those roots out if you can, if you have the room, and then backfill and press firmly as you do. Root bound plants in ground, unfortunately, I think digging them up would be the best bet and doing some root pruning, but that is a risky thing to do, and your plant will be set back regardless. But if you're brave and willing to do it, it might be worth it. But the best thing you can do is to try to prevent that from happening.
Great, awesome. Thanks for that answer. Sandra has shared another Doug Ptolemy resource here, Nature's Best Hope, about integrating native into urban areas. So I just want to make that mention to everyone. Tamara has another question. How do you design a native garden so that it's more appealing or acceptable to people such as neighbors who might think that native plants are just weeds?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think there's a few things that you can do. You can start with the more sort of common varieties of native plants, such as the rudbeckias, the black-eyed Susans. Grasses are really hot right now in garden design, and so that's where you can slip in a lot of native grasses. And then you can also plant, I think what looks tidier and what is actually better for pollinators seeking pollen and nectar is planting in waves. So instead of planting a kind of more meadow, more wild garden, which can be really beautiful, but it's in the eye of the beholder, planting in large kind of swaths or waves, if you have the space, kind of gives everything this pride of place. And so your neighbors might be a little more interested in looking at that.
Great. Okay. Awesome. I wanted to note that Tamara is suggesting to Lori, I vote for mulching with cardboard. I did that to get rid of gout weed and it worked. You monitor the edges. It takes as long as it takes as long as it takes. And you're feeding the soil at the same time.
Yeah, that's really good to know.
Tamara has another question. Would you use elements like bird baths or benches or paths as well?
Yeah, so incorporating more physical elements in the native garden is another way to sort of formalize it. So that's a really good suggestion, Tamara, to add those in to kind of appeal to a more humanistic way of looking at the native garden. And in addition to that, you will be attracting butterflies, birds, bees, all of which do need places to bathe or to drink. So bird baths are, I would say, part and parcel with you want to have a source of water near your native garden. Things like, a really beautiful piece of driftwood would look lovely in a native garden and act as shelter for, ground foraging birds and other insects as well. Rocks also look lovely in a native garden. And then a bench is a great idea because you want to sit there and enjoy it. And I will say one of the main kind of pushback comments that I get from folks, it's funny because some people will say, I really want a garden, but I don't want bees or wasps. I want flowers, but I don't want bees. And I try to let people know that generally speaking, especially native bees, they aren't aggressive and aren't out to get you. And in my, not, tons of years, but about a decade in the garden every day, I've been stung once. So don't be afraid to sit amongst these creatures.
I think that's great advice. Mm-hmm. I have a question here from Esther, who's asking, I have a small trumpet vine, which I understand is native. Will it take over and grow all over, or will I be able to control it?
So trumpet vine does grow a lot in one season. If you're interested in keeping it, I would just recommend you kind of stay on top of pruning it. I feel that you couldn't prune it too much, so it would kind of be, it's up to you to kind of shape it and form it to how you'd like it to grow. So that being said, yes, if you leave it alone, there is a risk that it will certainly take over. But if you have some time to prune it twice a season, I think that that's well worth it.
Perfect. Great. And it looks like we've inspired Lori to go out and collect cardboard for her project and bags of leaves from the neighbors. So that's great news.
I also, Lori, used bricks to hold down the cardboard or rocks if you want to try to forage for those.
And Tamara's added that she tries to put the plants that attract bees away from the buildings and paths where people walk by often, just to be on the safe side.
Yeah, for sure.
Deb has another question. When do you cut back flowers like black-eyed Susans or butterfly bush?
Yeah, so in fact, I would recommend that you don't cut these back until early spring, when the just as the fresh foliage is coming up, or even before it can come up. Things like the black-eyed Susans and echinaceas, their seed heads are incredible and necessary food for overwintering birds. Butterfly bush is the same, and honestly, I don't do as much work in the fall as people might think. A lot of the work should and could and can be done in the spring.
Perfect. And a follow-up question to that, Des, wondering how far down do you cut them to the ground?
The tender perennials, like the echinacea and the black-eyed Susans, I would cut down to the ground. The butterfly bush, I usually leave up about a foot. It does depend on the vigorous growth of your butterfly bush and where it's situated. I've always seen them in full sun and they grow like bananas. So so I cut them down, yeah, to all the way to a foot.
Okay, perfect. Lori's mentioning to Tamara, my south garden is kept as a wildflower field, but I do mow paths around them so the neighbors know it is intentional. One year I did have a complaint to bylaws, so I had to do this. That's too bad. I don't get it, but anyways. And from Tamara to Lori, making it look intentional seems to be really important for people. So yeah. Any other questions, anyone? Or maybe Courtney-Anne, like you've started sharing tips with me about winterizing gardens. Maybe that you could touch on that with native plant prepping.
So I'm really liking Lori's idea of collecting leaves from neighbors. I think it's important to, like I said, be kind of a lazy gardener in the fall. Definitely collect those leaves, but if you want, but if you can leave them in the garden bed, that's even better. These leaves are full of nutrients and minerals that will supply lots of fertilization to your soil. They also often host larvae on them that will overwinter within the folds of leaves and then grow into moths and butterflies in the spring. So displacing them, you know, oftentimes the plants that are the larval hosts for these creatures are also their food source. So if we displace them from that, we're not really giving these creatures much of a chance once they transform. Another thing I do, yeah, in the garden, honestly, I'm so lazy in the fall. I just do leaf. Fall, actually, I like to let people know this. Fall is a wonderful time to plant in the garden. The soils have warmed over the entire season, and so it's actually a more hospitable environment for roots than even the spring. The spring, where the soil is cool, is challenging for roots that are trying to establish themselves. On top of that, there are sales at nurseries, which is really nice. So you can capitalize on cheaper products. Yeah, I think that's kind of it. I like to do some fertilizing for sure, especially for the plants that are spring bloomers that will require lots of extra nutrient uptake as they try to blossom for us in April and June, May. I think that's about it.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks. Lori mentioned here, I can't use lots of my own leaves as I have lots of black walnuts. So not so good for mulch as they can be toxic to some plants. So I collect my neighbor's maple leaves.
Yeah,
so good save, Lori.
I have 2 black walnuts in my backyard, and yeah, it's too bad, but you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah. Any other questions from anyone? Oh, we have Susan here. Are you using any kind of fertilizer in the fall?
Yeah, so I generally use cured compost, like composted manure. I prefer to use organic, and I prefer to use sheep's manure over cow's manure. And the kind of like Cadillac of fertilizers and compost is mushroom compost. So if you can get your hands on that, that's the best stuff.
Out of my interest, what's the difference between cow and sheep manure?
I just find that the cattle manure is a little more acidic and a little more intense. The sheep's manure for me has just worked better, is easier to work with, and the plants seem to respond a bit better to that.
Fair enough. That makes sense. Okay. Oh, Sandra's saying, I'm sorry, but I am biased. Alpaca is best.
I've never used alpaca. We don't, having been a gardener in Toronto, it's really nice to learn about these rural hacks. So I'm going to look that down too.
Yeah, I didn't know that was a thing either. That's so cool. Tamara said, I've heard horse manure and earthworm castings are the best too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Maybe every gardener has their preferred brand.
Recipe.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, great. Any other questions, comments? Want to pick Courtney-Anne's brain about anything else? Tamara's asking, is it too late in the season to apply, I'm going to maybe not pronounce that right, mycorrhizal?
Yeah, mycorrhizal.
Thank you.
So I apply Myki when I plant, pretty much every plant, right in the hole, just like a sprinkling. If you want to use the dried Myki as a sort of like fertilizer application, I don't think it's too late, and I would do so as a soil drench.
Perfect. Kyla has a question. If I harvest the seeds from native plants, should I lay them now?
I would wait until the spring to put down the seeds. It really depends on the plant, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. Do you know what seeds you have saved?
Kyla, I don't know if you want to, oh, Mandara?
Monarda.
Mandara.
Who? Monarda. And Black-Eyed Susan? Yeah, I mean, I would wait till the spring, to be honest, just to give them the season of warmth. You can certainly try now, but I think you'll have more success if you do so in the spring.
Perfect.
Yes, some do need cold stratification, and some actually need to be passed through birds in order to germinate. But I don't believe that those three above do need the cold stratification.
Perfect. I have a note here from Tamara. I'll share. I have a maple tree that has maple wilt and trying to set it up for next spring. And Lori has added, comfrey is an amazing compost if you have it growing.
Oh, cool.
Lots of hacks.
Yeah, I'm gonna write that down too. I don't know a lot about large tree care, so I would maybe recommend that maybe you consult with an arborist. I work closely with Arbor House. They're a company that I've grown close with over the last few months and have used for a few of my clients and at my own place. The owner, Chris, is really knowledgeable and super friendly. So I would ask the tree questions or save the tree questions for him.
Perfect.
Any
other questions from anyone else? Garden related, native plant related? Anything we can take advantage of this horticultural expertise and lots of thank yous. That's so nice. Thanks for sharing. Let's do an arborist question.
Yeah, that was Yeah.
Yeah, we could totally get an arborist. We could find someone to speak about that and bring some expertise to this group.
I would love to.
Oh, go ahead,
Not to
Laurie.
be too many trees, and it wasn't safe at all. But what can we let go of, right? It's hard in a semi-urban property, and I love them all.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Thanks for sharing. I have another question here. Do you have any advice for first-time gardeners getting started?
Yeah, I do. My philosophy on gardening is that it's always an experiment, and that no matter how much you know, the season is going to give you something different. And so from there, it's really a matter of trial and error. You have a really particular microclimate wherever you are, that includes sun and the contents of and structure of your soil and wind. And so I guess with that said, there's no right and no wrong. I truly believe that, as long as you remain kind of optimistic and observe your space really well. And I think also keeping a log, if you can, of the things that you planted, the things that didn't work, because I think, as the years pass, we can forget what we've done. So keeping some kind of journal, or even like photos saved with the year as the file, is a great way to look back and remember what worked and what didn't. But I think trepidation is our greatest enemy when it comes to gardening. So just give it a try. One thing too that I find that a lot of first-time gardeners do is go to the nursery and buy what's blooming right then, and what looks really good then, and they'll buy one of it. I think, there is a sort of trial and error aspect to it, but if you can nail down a little bit of a composition or a design before you hit the garden centers, and again, that's with a sort of acute awareness of the conditions that you'll be planting in, through just, sitting, looking at the space, sipping your coffee every morning over a couple weeks or a month. Going to the nurseries with a plan is also a piece of advice that I would say. That said, I've already purchased like this shrub 50% off, and it's not on my list of plants, and I just picked it up. So go for it.
I have that problem like beyond nurseries, just in any store. So I have another question here from Deb, who's asking, do you design the gardens for your clients as well as planting them?
Yes, I do design. I do a number of things. So I can provide a really formal design that you'd, have all the specs for spacing and dimensions, but I can also do a really informal design that includes a really basic plant list and perhaps a hand drawing, or even I can walk through with you and just sort of verbally discuss what I think would work. But I always do like to provide an image-based plant list for my clients, at the very least.
Awesome, that's a great point. Esther's pointed out that Claremont Native Plants in Pickering has a huge sale right now. So
I'm gonna write that down.
yeah, everyone make note.
We'll see you there tomorrow.
Yeah. Any other questions from anyone? Any thoughts that have popped up as we've started discussing? Questions about planning for the spring? Tamara has a question. Do you prefer planting from potted plants or from seeds?
I like to do both. I've planted most of my garden in my new house through potted plants, but I have seeded a prairie meadow, just like a small, you'd call it a border garden, but I've done kind of meadow planting there, and that's all from seed. I guess it really depends on what kind of gratification you desire. If you want something a little more instant, go for the potted things, and from there, you can scale up and have a 12-foot tree planted in your yard, so you have a tree right then and there. And if you can invest a little time, you could do it from seed.
Perfect. Thanks for that. Any other questions from anyone? Thoughts? All right. Well then, I think I will take this opportunity to thank you so much, Courtney Craft, for joining us and for sharing your knowledge with all of us tonight and being part of this project. It was so much fun.
I had a great time. Thank you all so much.
Excellent.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
So I'll share, Courtney-Anne, as she mentioned, is going to share the list of nurseries with native plants with me. And so I'll share that with everyone who registered and attended tonight. And again, if you don't get that, feel free to email me, zoe@tndf.ca, ZOE. Yeah, and again, I'm going to send that one-page summary to everyone, and we'll post it on our website for future reference if it doesn't end up in your inbox. And I'll take this opportunity to mention that we have another virtual table talk coming up that I've called Botanical Bookworms. And the premise is essentially to vote on a book that is related to gardening and flowers. We have 3 books up for selection. And so that is available to vote on. The link is on our website and it's on our Facebook page. And so you can vote on the book, and by October 19th, we'll announce which book we're going to read, and we'll have a little over a month to read it. And December 3rd, we'll meet and discuss it. So it's sort of, we're just sort of test driving this idea of a virtual book club that's related to gardening. And so we'll see how this platform does for that. But of course, we want engagement from everyone else. So if you could help us vote on a book, we'd really appreciate it. If you're interested in participating, please register through our Eventbrite the same way you did with this table talk. And yeah, I look forward to hopefully seeing lots of the same faces. And if you'd like to participate in reading, and if you'd like help in securing a hard copy book, we've partnered with Brock Township Library, and they're going to set aside some books for us to reserve. And so if you want any assistance in securing the title once it's announced, just again, send me an email. I want to hear from everyone, basically. Everyone email me something. So I would love to hear from anyone. But if you'd like to help securing a book with this book club idea, then please let me know. And again, if you have any ideas for topics or speakers for this Table Talk platform, I'd love to hear from you. So please send that feedback. The Nourish and Develop Foundation is also looking for seed donations. So if you have any seeds that are coming from your garden right now, we have a seed library that we use as a resource to share seeds among our community. And we're looking for donations. So you can donate that through the book deposit slot at any of the Brock libraries. Just put it in an envelope and throw it in the book slot and we'll get it. So if you have any to share, that would be amazing. And anything else I have to say here? Well, I'm just so grateful that everyone joined. It seemed to be a pretty good turnout and a good first run, and welcome any feedback. And thank you again so much to Courtney-Anne Craft for joining us and being part of this project, and to Richard Dickinson from the Wild Garden, and to our whole To Dig for their partnership, and to our team at TNDF, Katarina, who is our videographer, for putting an amazing video together. That will be on our YouTube channel coming soon. And if no one else has any other questions or comments, I'll wish you a good night, and thank you again so much for joining. Happy gardening, everyone.